was always the Jags.
Always the Jags.
It's always the Jags.
Always the Jags.
Welcome in Always the Jags. It's your host, King Whale, and today we are going to be breaking down the preseason game, Week 2, Saints versus Jaguars. Again, it's kind of hard to break down these preseason games because, as Pete Prisco always says, like, people aren't playing for as much as you would think that they would, you know what I mean? And so it was more encouraging against the Saints, but at the same time, the worst team in the league, right? Like, I'm sorry. Like, I want it, like, we don't want to, like, a win is a win is a win. And when you see progress, you should celebrate it, right? You don't have to tear down everything. But let's be real. It's like, basically the Jaguars were able to lead 2 scoring drives. One drive that would have been a scoring drive, aside from a weird mishandle that ended up in a fumble. And then we were able to complete it with a touchdown. Had they got a touchdown that first drive, that probably would have been the only drive that Trevor played. So it was nice to see 2 drives lead into the red zone where we know we would have at least come away with 10 points. Again, had Ezra Cleveland not stepped on Trevor Lawrence's foot and caused a fumble. Trevor looks good in command of the offense, threw some nice passes. It seems like it's going to be much more of a quick rhythm, quick hitter offense. You probably won't see that many bombs to Brian Thomas Jr. very often, but that is something that I'm sure Liam Coen will have cooked up in his system that will allow you to have to respect. We're going to force defenses to respect every level of the field and every position in the field. Brenton Strange, I think he does his best work in the middle of the field. I think Travis Hunter is very good there. I think Brian Thomas Jr. is best on the sidelines. So he's stretching the field. Brenton Strange and Travis Hunter are allowing Trevor to hit the middle of the field and attack the ball downfield. So it looks very good from all those aspects. And honestly, Travis Etienne looked great. He looked great. And there is a lot of speculation out there that the Jaguars are using him so much in preseason as a starting running back to try to boost his trade value, because right now he's the most valuable trade chip we have. And if there's a team with like a starting safety or a good safety, I'm not opposed to trading him for a safety just because, but he's been doing a lot better, even picking up blitzes and blocking. I think, like, I don't know if it's about trade value. I think it might be Travis Etienne is just really, really wants to be in Jacksonville and is really trying to work to put that contract in, because he knows he's got 2 very serviceable rookies who, honestly, I wouldn't be mad at if they were our starters. Like, I'm okay with LaQuint Allen and I'm okay with Bashal Tutin. Now, I haven't seen them against like top flight, tackles and linebackers and all those things. We haven't really got to see them do that. But I do believe that their effectiveness could end up outpacing that of Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne. And Tank Bigsby was just starting to come on for us last year. So we'll see. I don't know. I don't think both of them would get traded. I think it's a chance that one of them could. And again, maybe they are trying to boost Travis Etienne's status, but I don't think it's as high as it possibly could be. And I think each preseason game, he's only upping it more. Because he had some really good runs in this game. Got stuffed a couple of times, but he still had some really good runs. So at least when the offensive line and he was able to run downhill, which, is a thing that, as a smaller frame running back was always kind of a knock on him. But anyway, so the offense looked great, right? I don't know if it was against the Saints starters or if they had some second stringers out there. People are saying the way, like, I don't know if Cam Jordan was playing. People say the way the Saints have so many, like, just random guys everywhere, some of those second stringers could be starters, who knows? But I would have expected the Jaguars to look great, whether it was against the Saints backups or the starters. Like, just again, worst team in the league. Probably doesn't have the worst defense in the league. I won't say that, but this is going to be the worst team in the league by far. There's not even a question. It'll be encouraging if the Saints win a couple of games this year. You know what I mean? So I definitely think that the Jaguars looked great and were expected to look great. Again, I would have been, to me, like, the fumble was a miscue. That's not something the Saints defense did, right? The ball didn't get punched out. A guy just happened to step on someone's foot. You know what I mean? And so realistically, it seems like they probably would have scored, right? So if they had led 2 drives, got a touchdown each one, those would have literally been perfect drives, right? And then again, I know that was the Saints starting offense, And the Jaguars defense gave up some plays, but was able to stop it when it mattered, right? And so the score was essentially, 7-0 when the starters came out, and would have been 14-0, basically enough to prove that, like, okay, the Saints defense wasn't able to do anything against us. The Saints didn't start putting points up on the board until our secondaries came out and Spencer Rattler started playing. And again, this was a great sign from the offense that was missing Dynami Brown and Travis Hunter. So two of our starting wide receivers were missing, and we still were able to put up, make some really nice drives, and appeared like we couldn't really be stopped. And appeared like we couldn't really be stopped. So lots to be encouraged by, lots to be happy with. It's just, I don't think you look at this game and say, okay, I don't need the starters to play at least one drive in our final preseason game against the Dolphins. Because again, the competition's only going to get tougher from here. So I don't think I necessarily need to see the starters play a whole quarter, but once we get to our final preseason game, I'd like to see a drive, maybe a touchdown drive, from the starters. It depends on if Miami is going to be playing their starters too. But yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that. Of course, the biggest news from this game is the one thing I will mention, Liam Coen's play calling. Because again, it's a little different. I would have been fine putting the ball in Trevor's hand in that situation if you had your starters. But again, end of the game, the Saints just scored. You have a chance to go down and win, connect on some big plays, and you're in field goal range. It's not possible I don't know if you wanted to, I don't even think it was about taking time off the clock because I think we still had a timeout. But even if we didn't, you went to throw a quick pass, and I guess everyone would have ran up to the line and spiked it to make the field goal easier for Cam Little. He just banged a 70-yarder, right? Like, and especially in the preseason, go see if he can do it. Fire them up again and win that game. Instead, it ended up being a tip ball to an interception. And again, this was our fourth string quarterback trying to lead that drive. It was a good test for like the 2-minute offense for Liam Coen's scheme. But as far as play calling there, I would have sent out the field goal unit once you were in range, right? And again, I don't think there was a need to drain the clock because there's only like 12 seconds left. You're not going against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs who could do the 13-second, go and score. So that was a little curious. But again, preseason, he probably was trying to try out more plays in his playbook. So it was a good time to test everything. I think I would have been fine with giving Cam Little a game-winning kick, even though it doesn't matter. But again, fire him up for the season, fire up his teammates. You saw how that 70-yarder fired everybody up. To me, that would have been more valuable to see how that carries over into the season. But again, I'm not a NFL head coach there. So that would be one thing to look at. That would be the only play calling wrinkle, I think I would say. And obviously, if he caught the pass, none of us would be talking about it being a bad decision, right? It's only a bad decision because it didn't work out, because it got tipped and intercepted. So it's not even like he threw an interception. It hit the players. Now he threw it into coverage, so it's not hard to see that the ball wasn't completed, but it was tipped and someone else caught it. So a little curious on the play calling there, but that would be the only, I think, play call that was kind of like, unsure. The only thing I worry about with this quick rhythm offense is, you kind of use the passing game as an extension of the running game. So, if you instead of getting 3 yards on a run, you do a quick pass to get 3 yards, right? But passing is usually how you pick up chunk plays, 10, 15, 25 yards. You want to be able to hit across the middle. So my only thing is, if we're consistently doing these plays where we're getting 3 yards, 3 yards, 3 yards, 3 yards, if those work every time, you'll get first downs up and down the field, right? But, if you ever get stuffed on a run play, you can't rely on quick rhythm. You know what I mean? You kind of like, obviously you need to mix it up and have some ebb and flows in there. And Liam Coen's scheme starts with the run game. And we saw some good scheme in the run game. Some guys were opening holes. Patrick McCarry looks pretty good playing out there. So I guess all of that time will tell, right? And so the biggest news from the game, of course, comes from the trade that was made shortly after, which is, I don't know if they just like swapped and it was just like, hey, Luke, you could just stay here. But basically, Luke Fortner was traded for Khalen Saunders, a defensive tackle for the Saints. So we traded who probably was going to be the third string center. Maybe he might have slightly outplayed Jonah Monheim in camp, or my guess is they were about equal, right? About equal. And if you got two players that are equal, if one of them's a rookie, you keep the rookie because the rookie's going to, in theory, ascend and continue to get better. So I think that's what it was. I don't think that Monheim necessarily beat out Luke Fortner for the backup center position, but I think they feel good enough about him to have him be the backup center, which will be interesting. 7th round rookie is now our backup center. This is saying that he made the roster. A lot of 7th round rookies don't end up making the roster. So that's an impressive stretch and to me use of this draft class that James Gladstone has assembled, because it looks like a lot of the players are going to end up making the roster. I think the only one who might not might be Ryan Lane, you know. So it's lots of healthy competition too, but it's interesting to see how many players are making the roster. But either way, we traded Luke Fortner, our backup center, after Robert Hainsey came in, and he was traded for defensive tackle Khalen Saunders. Most people probably don't know him. He's not a big name, but if you ever saw the one-handed defensive tackle interception where he ran up and down the field on the Chiefs, that was him. Also, little known fact that's a little odd. I guess his brother is a dancer for Taylor Swift. So somehow they had very different career paths, but somehow intersected now that she's dating Travis Kelce. So that's a little, I don't know if that increases the chances in any way that she'll be at the Monday night game versus the Jags. I have no idea, but just thought that was a little interesting. But either way, my thoughts on the trade: chess move, genius by James Gladstone, because now we have our defensive tackle depth was looking, and I think some more of our defensive tackle depth was better this game. Like they were better against the run and doing things better. But man, do we need Eric Armstead and Mason Smith, because we are hurting in the middle. So having him as a run stuffer is good. It was a good pickup. He got 3.5 sacks for the Chiefs in 2022. He's not that far removed from that season. He didn't have much doing with the Saints. I think he got like 2 sacks. I think it was last year he got 2 sacks. And again, you could argue that maybe the Jaguars defensive line will be better than what the Saints had, because they had Cam Jordan, but he's only getting older. We've got Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen. So, there might be some more opportunities for Saunders to create, but really what we need him to do to plug. And again, to me, to get a player at a position of value in exchange for someone who wasn't going to make the roster, that is genius. That is James Gladstone cooking. And I hope to see more of that. I hope we continue to do that, and I hope he continues to make those bold, fearless trades that we see other teams make. But to me, that's just a sign that he's a good GM. He's a great GM, and I was in on him from the very beginning. Had we gotten Ben Johnson and like Dennis Allen, I would have been in on James Gladstone coming in after that, or even before that. I was in on him from the very beginning because I think he drafts extremely well. So that's pretty much my thoughts for the preseason game. Again, the defense looked good at first, which is what we mainly wanted to see, because fans were reasonably upset at the Steelers' second stringers running up and down on us. So seeing the Saints starters get stonewalled was nice. As we brought up the backups, though, you could tell. I don't know if it was scheme. There were a lot of guys out of place. And again, second stringers versus second stringers, but that, allowed the Saints to catch up 17-17. So you could tell that Anthony Campanelli was very visibly frustrated at times by players not being in the right spot with scheme. And I don't know if that's good or bad, right? Because he was getting angry, and you could tell, and you kind of want someone to get angry when your scheme's not being executed, but it's also like, is that because your scheme is too complicated, or what is it? I've had conversations with people that talk about Ryan Nielsen didn't have a bad scheme. He just didn't have the personnel to execute it because he wanted to do a lot of heavy rotation. And that works if you've got like Eagles defensive tackles. But when you've got 4th-rounders and stuff like that with the Jaguars, it doesn't always work. You're going to not be able to make a play because you got the wrong defensive people out there, because they're not as good as your starters. There's a noticeable drop-off. But again, I will always maintain, if you can't assess if you can't adjust your scheme to your personnel, I don't know if you're a good defensive coordinator. Now, it may not be the right fit, and maybe your scheme only works in a certain way to create certain coverage and mismatches and players, zone is in a man scheme or blitzing and all of those things that go into it. But I think the absolute best defensive coordinators can adjust their scheme to their personnel, or they get to a point where they have such a say in personnel to where they don't have to adjust too much. Because the only thing that changes every single year is personnel. And if you don't want you to be the thing that changes every year as a coordinator, you have to make sure that you can pinpoint the players that work in your scheme and get them, or be able to adjust your scheme to your players. Because again, your personnel is going to change every single year. Sometimes that has nothing to do with you. Players just get too good and need too rich of contracts with a salary cap. So we'll see again. And I'm not exactly like I wasn't super high on Anthony Campanelli. I think for a first time head coach, it would have been better to have a more seasoned defensive coordinator in there. Because he's a linebackers coach, which is great, but like I would have preferred to have like a a former head coach like Robert Saleh, or I mean, I maintain that if we got Brian Flores last year instead of Ryan Nielsen, Doug Peterson would still have a job. Like I'll say that easily. If we had hired Brian Flores instead of Ryan Nielsen, I don't know if Brian wanted to come here, but if we had brought in him instead of Ryan Nielsen, Doug Peterson would still be the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars because he probably would have made the playoffs last year with that defensive scheme. So anyway, I say all that to say, again, noticeable improvement. There's a lot of things for the fans to feel good about, but I don't think we're done seeing the starters. I think we need to see them a little bit again in the preseason. So let me know your thoughts about the Jaguars preseason game against the Saints. Let me know about that trade. What do you think about it? It must have been pretty funny because like they didn't release that Luke Fortner was traded, but like they released the trade like 12 minutes after the game. So, I mean, the guys were still in the locker room, so it'd be like, hey, Caleb, you could just go with the Jaguars. And it was like, hey, Luke, like Luke's about to get on the bus. And it's like, no, just stay here, man. You're with the Saints now. It's like, what? Like, I don't know. I think it would have been funny. But anyway, let me know your thoughts below. And as you, of course, always know, it was always the Jags.